Thanks so much for finding us here at the Morning Glory Project. I'm your host, Betsy Graziani Fassbender, and my co-producer, Angela Washington, and I are ever so proud and honored to bring the stories of amazing people to you. These are survivors, thrivers, innovators, and trailblazers who tell us not just their stories, but how they got through whatever they got through to get to where they are. We hope you find them as inspiring as we do. Thanks so much for listening and for giving us the honor of your time. I'm so happy and honored today to bring to the Morning Glory Project Alex Kuisis. Alex has written a book called Truth Matters, Love Wins, and I just finished it yesterday, and it's an extraordinary book. Let me tell you just a bit about her. Alex was a happily married early childhood educator-turned-health coach, living in a beautifully fulfilling life in Denver, Colorado, when the doorbell rang on September 1st, 2016. It was the police, there to arrest her for 7 felonies that she did not commit. Truth Matters, Love Wins is both an astounding account of fighting false accusation in a slanted criminal justice system and an uplifting testament to choosing integrity and introspection when responding to staggering levels of betrayal. Alex's dedication to surviving her darkest hour through faith, love, and personal growth will captivate and inspire you, as it has me. It's a must-read for anyone curious about how to handle the pain and anger that accompanies life's most devastating curveballs. I think that's most of us, Alex. You can find out more about her at her website, Go Ask Alex. That's ALEX, not ALISE. GoAskAlex.org. Alex Kuisis, welcome to the Morning Glory Project. I'm honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy.
So, Alex, tell me just a little bit about what was going on in your life before September 1st, 2016. Fill us in just a little bit.
So before September 1st, 2016, I had been married for about 4 years at that point. So still kind of in that newlywed window. I had a career in education, a past career in education, but also a bunch of different things. I'm a bit of a professional dabbler.
I can identify with that.
Yeah. I had done things in the education field. It's both my undergrad and my master's degree are in the field of education, early childhood education. And then I'd had an organizing business called Alex Organize for about 10 years or so, where I literally went into people's homes and businesses and I organized their stuff. And then they were sort of part-time endeavors. I worked part-time at schools. I worked part-time with my own business. And then it morphed into doing organizing galas and silent auctions and things of that nature for nonprofits, both schools and otherwise.
And this is just sort of your natural quality of being which becomes relevant to your story later on, but this kind of natural quality of being somebody who could kind of see the picture and organize things, and whether it's tapering somebody's stuff or kind of planning things or whatever, you're kind of, you're a thinker of that type. Can you come to my house, by the way? I could appreciate that.
We can talk.
Okay.
I've got a bit of a visionary quality.
Sure.
Whether that's to a physical space for how to organize the actual furniture, how to plan out the events of a party, over a course of time. But yeah, that is a natural strength of mine.
And along with that, though, this was your entrepreneurial business in a way, but a bunch of your work, as I understand from reading your story, was around children.
Yes.
Was around working in schools or as a nanny in those kinds of ways. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, that's also a natural strength, I guess, of mine. Ever since I was very, very young, I've always had just an easy way of being around kids younger than me. I'm an older sibling, the oldest daughter. And again, my college career or my college degree was around becoming a teacher, because what I wanted to do actually ultimately was have a bunch of kids of my own. Now, the universe unfolded differently for me, and that ended up not being my story.
So here you were, and a bunch of that work, in addition to working in school settings and preschool settings and those kinds of things, was nannying children, and then kind of becoming part of people's families, really, in a way
Absolutely.
that a good, because you were sometimes a live-in nanny and sometimes a visiting nanny, right?
Right. Well, and I moved away from home after I graduated college. And so I left Wisconsin and I moved to Colorado. And it was the first time I'd been that far away for that long of a period of time. And I found myself, I got a couple jobs because, again, that's what I do. I worked at a health club and I had two families that I was nannying for interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I loved the variety of it. And then I needed health insurance. And so I got a job at a preschool and just loved it. Felt like everything clicked into place. I still had the job at the health club. I ran the kids center over there and I did the birthday parties over there. And yes, the job at the preschool, there was a policy. Of course you can babysit. Why wouldn't you be able to babysit for these families? They bring them, the kids come to you all day, all week.
And you know them,
You're
and
a
they
you're a
trust
caregiver.
you, and
Yeah, you're one of their
right.
caregivers. So going to the families' houses in the evenings, for the weekends, even to do extended overnight, parents are leaving on a trip, kind of
Right.
babysitting was super common, not only for me, but also all my colleagues.
Right. So you became part of a number of different nanny situations, one with a particular family that we're going to call X family. We're not naming them
Hmm.
for reasons that will become apparent. But you became a part of this family and their two young daughters. Really, you sounded like the world's best auntie in the world, the kind of auntie that I like to be for my own nieces and nephews, and
Yeah.
going on trips with them, having slumber parties, doing the wonderful things that loving aunties do with their nieces, and all of that. Then September 1st time. So that's sometime before, and what, 15 years later, something like that. You get this knock on the door in September 1st of 2016.
Yeah, I'd become exceptionally close with one family in particular, the X family.
Right.
And so, as you mentioned, so much so that they invited me into their home. I lived with them for a year. I helped them to raise up their daughters, and they became like not my kids, but like my nieces. My
Right.
One of them said, "You're like my godmother." We don't have a godmother, but I think that if I had a godmother, it'd be like you. Fairy godmother was another phrase. It was strong endearment. And when I got married in 2012, they were in my wedding. These kiddos were, their mom was, their brother who had come along was, like, a very ingrained, enmeshed.
Right.
And then we became estranged. It became hard. It was on their end.
And you say their end, it was really with the mom, the children.
Well, according to the mom who I was still talking to, the kids and I came to find out what actually happened years later. But at the time, it was very confusing to me. I didn't understand what had happened. She fed me a story that didn't click in my head, but I didn't at the time have reason or the wherewithal to call her a liar to her face. This was
Right.
a friend of mine saying, well, my kids just need space and
They
time.
need a break from you.
Yeah, for whatever reason. And I was heartbroken. I mean, so many friends witnessed me grieving as if they had died.
Well, because these were children that you loved and in your life, and all of a sudden that changed.
And then September 1st, 2016, the doorbell rings. And it, as you mentioned, was the police there to take me in, arrest me for 7 felonies it boils down to sexually mishandling a child. So there were 3 incidences that they were saying happened 3 times. And because I was a person in a position of trust, each of those 3 counts got doubled. And then they were saying, well, there are 3 of them. And to our eyes at the law, that's a pattern. And so that's a 7th one that got tacked on there. So that's what they came to get. And I racking my brain on the way to the detective thinking, because I babysat for dozens. I mean, at that point, hundreds of children over the length of my career. But even in present time, I was like going through all the different families, like what happened? These particular girls I hadn't spoken to in almost 3 years at that point. So again, I'm current at that moment. I was actively working with so many families, and I'm like, what could have possibly gone wrong? Like something went south, and I couldn't figure it out. I go to talk to the detective. He says, "Do you know Loretta X, who at this stage was a 16-year-old girl from the X family who I'd known since she was literally 6 months old. So not quite born, but almost." And it was her coming with these accusations. She's my accuser. And in that moment, in that detective's office, my heart, it shattered into a million pieces. And while my anxiety is spiking through, I was just, how do I even begin to pull this apart for this gentleman across the desk here who is super not interested in hearing really what I have to say. He was just more, I mean, again, I would come later to find out that was the extent of his entire investigation, was this one conversation that we were having where I was trying, like, wait a minute, what? No. What? No.
Well, and let's stay there for a second, because you reacted, and I was reading the story, you reacted like an innocent person would, which is you told him anything he wanted to know. You just said things, right? Because you're innocent. You
100%.
He says, have you ever, slept in the same bed, or the kinds of things that you might do with young girls
what he asked me was, have you lived at these addresses? And I said, yeah, I have. And Loretta has been to these addresses? Yeah.
And that was all the proof he needed in that moment.
That's all he needed. Yep. To say, I'm handing this over to the DA. You're going to jail.
So let me pause here and take a divergent for a moment.
Sure.
This is 2016. This is the beginning of the Me Too movement. That's the backdrop that's kind of thrumming around.
Yeah.
This is the election year. This is when women put on pink pussy hats and protested. I was among them, so I'm going to take full ownership of that. This is also many years after our previous guest, Laura Davis, has published a book, Courage to Heal, which is empowering women and girls and boys as well to be believed when they report incest or child abuse or molestation in some way. And so, of course, there's this other wave of things going on. And I don't want to sound as though, we should dismiss it when a kid says these things. And
no,
I don't believe that's what you're saying at all either.
No.
So
Yeah.
Here you are in this groundswell of, we believe accusers. And that may be where that particular detective was coming from. Hey, she said it had happened. That's what I'm told. We believe people. I don't need to get very much information. Either that or he was just a bad cop or lazy or whatever it might be. So here you are accused of this thing. You have a short stay in jail and an ankle monitor that you have to pay for, by the way. When you're plunged into a system you don't understand, you learn all kinds of quirky things, like the fact that if you have to wear an ankle bracelet, you got to pay the rent on it.
Pay for it.
And so the accusation happens, and this unfolds over the course of 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like on a TV show that you're accused and then the next thing you're paraded up to court, and that all happens in the course of a 60-minute TV program. This was a
Right.
very elongated thing, during which time we have this notion of, presumed innocent, but you didn't get treated like you're innocent. Tell me what happened as a
No.
result of simply the accusation before even court wasn't until another 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So in the 2 years between the accusation and the court, you're limited. Everything changes.
I mean, almost everything changed. Almost everything changed. My professional life changed. I had, as I mentioned, I had a few contracts that I was working on to do events for nonprofits and such, and I got, letters of thanks anyway, kind of thing,
Cancellations.
Yeah.
Well, because this also hit the newspapers.
Oh, it sure did. It hit the news in Colorado and California. I lived in Colorado at the time, obviously, but I had lived in California. I'd worked at schools in California. And so they were, and again, understandably, objectively, they were trying to get the word out. Does anyone else have stories about this person they'd like to share with us?
Well, and if you had done this, if God help us, if indeed you had been a person who was guilty, and if I was a parent in a school where the teacher had been accused of such a thing, I'd want to know that, and I wouldn't want the teacher in the classroom with my kids. And so there's this weird. I found myself wearing several different hats as I was reading. My parent hat, my educator hat, my therapist hat, my, I believe, Alex hat. I was wearing all those hats, and it just really. So you were prohibited. You were not allowed to be with children.
Right.
Including your own nieces.
Right. I had to eventually go before a judge to ask for special permission to even speak to my own nieces on like FaceTime or the telephone, which was granted. And a judge also gave me the opportunity to name other families that I could have as exceptions to this no contact with minors rule, which was extraordinarily odd. It was very, my lawyer was like, this doesn't usually happen. So there were these little glimpses of what I called kindnesses along the way that I came to rely on, because it hit me quickly. I understood quickly that one accusation on TV was enough to undo my name in a lot of people's eyes. It didn't take much for the landscape, my social landscape, to shift immediately.
Well, let's talk about that too, because it does, sometimes these trying moments do split our friendships in a way. And I know that survivors of trauma, survivors of people who suffer chronic illness or cancer or a tragic event, that it becomes this sorting device in your community, doesn't it? It's like, who's going to believe who I am? Who can't tolerate the noise and the chaos and the whatever? And who is going to jump on the bandwagon against you? And it seems like that it sliced up and you're a very social person. You have a big community of people, I'm gathering. And so it really kind of cut those into parts.
Very much so. Very much so. My lawyer asked me to reach out to people who had maybe seen me with this family over the years, because again, this had been a long time.
And
16
you dragged
years.
these kids around to events and parties and barbecues and all kinds of things.
I took them to see my parents in Georgia. Me and the two girls went on a spring break to see my parents, and they were that close,
Right. So you sent out letters, or you contacted people.
I reached out to people, over 100 people after I got home from jail. That first weekend, I called to let people know what was happening, to ask for support. I knew I was going to need people around me. And I was watching all the ways that my world was shutting down, like the ways I usually got, contact with people, work, sitting on boards at schools, etc., gone. And so I knew that the word wasn't done spreading, as it were. So I called people, and we were talking about how the news stations had put out my picture. It was my story next to somebody else's story. This woman had been a teacher in a school and had gotten pregnant by one of her students. The two stories that I was being linked with this woman, and our pictures were being out together, and our stories were being told, like two teachers in the whatever, and her, it was a mess. It was a mess.
So Alex, I want to usher this a little bit.
Yes.
Because so this went on for a long time, and
It did.
And also you're quick to point out that that you were in this system. You had, first of all, the good news is that your husband instantly knew the truth of you, believed you, was on your side with you. That doesn't sound like it was unwavering, if I'm gathering that well.
No, and so that's why I say I don't say everything changed. I say most things changed.
Most things changed. So you had him, and you had a core group of friends and your own family that were with you through this process. And you're also really quick to point out that there was a lot that went really wrong in your court situation, and what was allowed and what wasn't and all that. The family court system in this country needs some work. It's a business. It's a profit-making business.
Mm-hmm.
They pressured you for many, 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 many times to take a plea deal, and threatening you with, this could be 25 years in jail. This could be life in jail. This could be all these things. You need to, plea down to just a misdemeanor of this and a this of that, and it'll only be 5 years, or it'll only be probation, but you'll still have to be a registered sex offender, and all these things. And you were steady in your decline. No.
That's right.
Tell me where you got that. Because I would imagine the terror of maybe losing absolutely everything, going to prison as a sex offender is a terrible fate. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in you was this dedication that no, and no matter, all the way down to the very end, you were not going to plea bargain. Where did that come from? How did you find that? I don't know that everybody would have that kind of courage.
That's, you're not the first one to say something like that to me about this. And I don't have a good, solid, kind of answer. It is, to me, it was just simply a non-negotiable. I did have moments where I stood and thought, am I just writing my own death sentence here? Like, am I ending my own life by saying, no, I'm taking this to a jury. No, I literally will die on this hill. I had moments where I had to check in, but I never wavered from, I have to stay with the truth. I have to believe that matters. That literally became the title of my book. Truth has to matter. And if I knew that I had a better chance of my soul being right if I stood my ground, because I know that I'm right, that what I'm saying is true, I'd rather stand my ground and know in my soul that it's true in jail than walk around out here with this the irony of having a false
accusation.
Well, yeah, like
not even just an accusation, a false.
Yeah, then say, okay, all right, I'll just plea out of this and go on some list and register as something that I then would have had to have taken a lot. Like I would have had to have, yes, I have rehabilitated. I would have had to lie detect. You see what I'm saying? Like they would have.
Yeah, you would have had to lie in service of.
Yes.
Of keeping yourself
and
out.
So I thought, if there's no.
Well, it sounds like you reached I can't live like that.
I cannot. No, I would be miserable with that kind of falsehood.
And you're quick to point out in your story, repeatedly pointed out that, and I should say to listeners, Alex is Caucasian and comes from a family, had a husband with a job. And so you had options of support and help
That's right.
that are not available to everyone. And you may have even gotten a few, winks and nods and lucky breaks along the way.
That's right.
And people of color, people of lesser means, people who don't have the support system that you had might have to take a plea deal because they don't have the money or the time or anything to pay lawyers. And it's not like, you had this money laying around on the couch cushions. I don't mean to imply that. It was it was hugely costly.
Yeah.
But, through your hard work and support of loved ones, you were able to do that. That's not everyone's option. And I love, you have this quality in the book. You drop these little motifs through the book. And one of them is kindness accepted, kindness accepted. You kind of keep saying that. And also the Lord's Prayer and the 23rd Psalm and elements that it sounded in the course of the book that you were kind of reassuring yourself and expressing gratitude and reassuring yourself and expressing gratitude over and over and over again. I wonder if you see it that way, if it's self kind of affirmation that love wins. I have love on my side. I have truth on my side. And then also I need to express gratitude to whatever force it is that brought this to me.
Every step along the way. Yes. Even down to wearing that ankle monitor, which was, nothing but a pain in my rear. It was cumbersome. It hurt. It created, there were problems around it.
Yeah.
And yet finally got removed in December. And that even was like one of those little winks from a judge. My lawyer was like, you already asked this court. They're not going to take it off. And I said, please just ask one more time. And they did. And it was granted to come off. So that was another unexpected, kindness collected.
The one thing I really love toward the end of the story is that you ask yourself, so what am I supposed to have learned from this? What about me got revealed? I can't do their part. I can't fix the broken family and the dysfunctional mom and the girl that, whether she either told this story because of brokenness in her family and a need for attention, or whether she somehow came to believe it. You had merciful feelings along with your anger. They live side by side. But you got to the point later in the story where it was just like, okay, so I can't do anything about them anymore. But what is my lesson to learn here? Why has this happened to me? And what am I supposed to get out of this whole dang thing? This whole horrible nightmare. Do you have a notion of what that is? What was the big thing you were supposed to learn?
To be honest, I'm still picking through it.
Sure.
There are still moments, days, stretches of time where I look around now. I live in Tennessee. I just have a whole different life. And I think any day now, this will make sense. So I still have a lot of that.
I love that, Alex. Let me tell you why I love that. Because I think that people think that there's going to be this day when you're going to go, well, it all happened for a reason. It's a phrase that I really hate, by the way. I really react to that. It all happened to a reason, because sometimes the reason just sucks. I don't think it's like it all happened for a reason. I think it's like it happened. So what's the thing I can pull from it? What can I get out of this? Because we have had other guests that have suffered horrible tragedies on this program, people whose children were murdered, or people who have lost loved ones in accidents. And if you look for the reason in that, you're just going to torture yourself. But to me, your way of asking the question wasn't like, this happened for a reason. What's the reason? It was like, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is the thing that I can take out of this nasty pile of rubble that's been dealt to me? Right.
Well, because there are two ways, more than, but like two main ways I always saw from the beginning, from the day of arrest all the way through to the point of, okay, it's over now. very inconsequential to me. Forgiveness, for example, is something I work on for myself, not to forgive myself, but to forgive what's happened to me for myself. So that, because whether I grant the forgiveness or not, it's my nervous system holding that. They don't know the first thing about what I'm doing in my life these days. So if I'm, or any of the days afterwards. So to stew around in a victim kind of like, this happened to me and I wasn't expecting it and boo hoo hoo, that's only my own self who's having trouble getting going from that. It has zero effect.
Right. Well, and it's a bit of a spoiler to say that of course you prevailed, but we know you did because you're not in jail and you're here with us.
Yeah.
So we know that the Titanic sank at the beginning of the movie too. So I think we can live with that spoiler.
Right.
Well, Alex, I'm going to tell on you just a tiny bit. And that is that right before we began recording this conversation, you and I were checking in on the technology and all. This felt tearful to you. This, like, I don't know if I'm up to this. I don't know. So even today,
Yeah,
the feeling of unworthiness, the feeling of, I don't know that I deserve to tell this story, is still with you. And I want people to know this is a process that happens over time. And that throughout your story, you employed lots of different things, from the support of friends to spiritual practices, things that you call even woo-woo in your way, that you used a psychic, you used any kind of method of that some people may or may not cotton to, and that's fine. But whatever you needed, you did, and it got you through. And I'm so grateful that you did. I'm so grateful that you're here. Truth Matters, Love Wins is more than a book title. It seems that it is your base, the tenet of who you are, the philosophy that you operate your life within. And it's a moving book. It reads like a detective novel in lots of ways. And I'm so grateful that you've written it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being part of the Morning Glory Project. And folks, you can read Truth Matters, Love Wins by Alex Kuisis, spelled Kuiss.
Kuisis.
Excuse me. Kuisis. Hey, I'm Betsy Graziani Fossbinder. I've had my name spelled up so many times. I'm sympathetic to that. So let me say it again. Kuisis. And you can find her at goaskalex.org. Thank you so much for being part of the Morning Glory Project.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. What a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Betsy.
Well, I went a little overtime in my conversation with Alex today, and I didn't even get to ask her a whole bunch of questions I wish I had the time for. Her story made me a little nervous at first, I'm going to admit. I was hesitant to share a story about the false accusation from a child about sexual abuse, because so much of my life has been devoted to helping children's stories be believed, helping women's stories be believed, helping victims of sexual assault and incest, whatever their gender, to be believed. And I'm particularly aware of this because of our guest in the past, Laura Davis, who spent a lifetime helping people to tell their stories and helping them to be believed, and also was attacked, saying that she was manufacturing false memories in people. That's not what this story was. This was, and her book tells more of the detail than we got into today. This was a broken young girl from a very troubled relationship in her family who adopted this story out of her own brokenness. So it was a false accusation, and it's sort of the other side of the experience that I usually am on. What also lingers with me about Alex and her story is that feeling of false accusation. I know that a couple of times in my life I've been falsely accused. I was once falsely accused of a crime. It all worked out. A crime that somebody else committed and made it look like mine. I was once falsely accused of plagiarizing an idea, something that's so anathema to me that it really shook my tree for a while, I gotta tell you. And that feeling can breed defensiveness and bitterness and angst. To be misunderstood, to be told that you are something when you're not, it can shake your identity. And both of those events in my life, those ones I've named and others along the way, have caused me to really pause and get in touch with what my truth is and to live in that and to stop worrying what other people believe, unless it's a legal case and you've got to prove it, of course, but to stop worrying about what other people think and to know what's true about myself. It's not easy. It's not easy. And Alex had to go through a lot to get there. Perhaps you've been falsely accused, someone thinking something of you that isn't true. You've been misunderstood. Finding your truth and believing that love wins ultimately can be a remedy for that. And that's a pretty nice extra bloom. I hope that wherever you are, that you are living in your truth and that love is winning in your life and that you get to bloom.